Digital 410 Productions proudly presents the What's in Your Head podcast.
Digitized live from the ACT Computer Studios in Cape Coral, Florida, it's the What's in Your Head podcast with your hosts Gordon and Don Abernathy.
What's up, OG5? It's another episode of the What's in Your Head podcast on this fine Monday. And as always, joining us from Las Vegas, Nevada is our co-host and my brother, Gordon Abernathy. Gordon, how you doing tonight, friend?
I'm doing all right.
Getting good grades. Your future's so bright, you got to wear shades.
In Vegas, absolutely.
And joining us from Texas, you may know him from TikTok. You may know him as one of the co-hosts from the Hooch podcast. Hopefully our new friend of ours, Mr. Michael Harris. Michael, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, I'm just enjoying, this Texas weather right now, and a lot of freedoms going on out here, so I'm having a good time.
It's funny you said that. I was thinking today, we're having you on the podcast, and maybe if we produce a friendship out of here, we need to start the Free State podcast, and we'll have different hosts on who live in free states who have the ability to enjoy the freedoms that are still being allowed to us by our governors, if you will.
Yes.
Speaking
of down. You know where to reach me.
Yeah.
There you go.
Speaking of which, have you guys been, they're not talking much about it on the media. Have you guys been hearing what Ontario's going ape shit right now?
Oh, yeah. I've been following it mainly through a lot of TikTokers, and I have no idea what's going on. For some reason, they're saying that it's turning into a police state. There's other rumors of China being in Canada, so it's really hard to figure out or decipher what's really going on. So.
Well, what doesn't help is apparently, for those you guys who don't know, they're whatever the political equivalent to their governor is in Ontario, they're estimating that their COVID spike may hit 2,000 in May. From what I don't know, a second strain or whatever, some reason they believe that their COVID is going to spike to 2,000 hospital beds in May, and so they've initiated a lockdown. Not only is
they're also, hold on, I didn't want to cut you off, but there are also new projections published by the advisory group on Friday showed new cases rising above 10,000 a day.
And so they're on a new lockdown, but not only are they on a lockdown, here in the States, we had lockdown. California's been locked down. But
yeah, how'd that work?
It's getting, here's the thing. Ontario's going further off the deep end. If you leave your house, the cops will pull you over and interrogate you and ask you where you're going, and then they will deem themselves if what you're doing and where you're going is necessary. And if it's not, they will, I'm sure, either fine you and or arrest you. But there's video clips of downtown Ontario where there's 20 or 30 people going through the streets and just all these cops in riot shields all over the place, body checking them in the walls and taking them down and arresting them. But what makes things worse, and if you're into the conspiracy side, some point today, the three major cell phone carriers in that area all lost service. And so they're like, wait a minute, are you guys taking our service down so we don't talk about this online? But according to Global News, Canada, Rogers Wireless server starting to return to normal after mass outages, company says. Telecom giant Rogers says wireless calls, SMS, and data services are starting to return to normal for its customers after mass outage, which lasted several hours on Monday. Quote, it will take several more hours for all customers in the region to return to full service. A tweet from the company said, quote, we will continue to work around the clock with our new partners, Ericsson, until that happens. Earlier on Monday, the company said recent software updates is to blame for the service interruption.
That's convenient.
It's possible, but...
I mean, it's really weird how all of a sudden all these conspiracy theories, what people like to call conspiracy theories, I call it truth. But all of a sudden, cell phone towers are going down, people are losing services, and they're losing all this stuff, and then they have their lockdowns, they have police running through the streets, policing people up, asking them for their papers pretty much.
Are your papers?
Yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah.
To the point where one concerned Canadian citizen and a group of friends went to their side of the Niagara Falls and set up a Canadian flag upside down at night, shine their headlights on it so that we here on our coast could see it. So I don't know. It's just crazy.
Well, not to sound like a crazy guy, but I will.
Okay.
if they had the 2A type situation there, would they be able to lock it down?
I don't know, but what I meant to say is this Rogers Communication is supposed to be their giant, and they're blaming it on a software rollout. One of two things. One, if you're a giant, how many towers do you have? How many servers do you have as an IT guy? And two, instead of doing a mass rollout, someone's head should be on a block. Shouldn't you maybe update one piece of equipment, see if it fails, and once that equipment survives, then roll it out? Why would you roll out a software update to your entire nationwide network or your region-wide network to the fact that you're risking you have no redundancy? What IT guy is going to update equipment and also update their redundant equipment as well? That's insane and short-sighted. And the Chihuahua feels the same way.
Yeah, so I think Canada may or may not be a test. Because it's North America, of course, they're not really worried about the South too much. The South, if they really wanted to take over, Mexico and all that stuff by shutting them down, that'd be very easy to do. Mm-hmm. So they have to figure out, another country or another part of our continent that has a better infrastructure. So if we can shut Canada down, how hard would it be to start from the north and work our way down and start shutting down America slowly?
Yeah, it's
slippery slope.
100%. It's crazy. Your dogs are angry. So, Michael, give us a little background on you. I know you served in the Army, correct?
Yes, so I served in the Army. I joined in 1995. I retired in 2016. I was pretty close to doing 22 years. I got out in my last day in the military, July 1st, 2016. I was an infantryman, 4 deployments, 3 to Iraq, 1 Afghanistan, 1 considered Kosovo deployment. I was there also. And it was the best time of my life. Then after that, I got out in 2016, joined the Sheriff's Department here in Travis County. Worked for the Sheriff's Department for about 5 years. I just recently left the Sheriff's Department. Now I'm selling CBD oil.
Well, I want to get to the CBD oil in a minute, and I want to get to something you guys were talking on in your last episode of the Hooch podcast, which I thought was pretty cool we can extend, which is some people wanting to lower the voting age to 16, and also the fact that you said you did your last tour as an infantryman at the age of 38, which is insane. But real quick, because you brought up as being a someone who was a law enforcement officer as well, I did a TikTok earlier today. It was an unofficial survey. Minneapolis City Council has decided that they're going to fund a new, not police force, not even a branch of the police. It will have to have some legalities with the police, but they want to make an unarmed traffic, let's just say traffic enforcement unit, if you will. As someone who served in law enforcement, I don't know. I'm just going to go based off the information I know and stories I've heard. Next to domestic violence calls, wouldn't you say one of the more dangerous things as a police officer is traffic stops and walking up to someone's car?
Yes. And that is very dangerous. And one thing I could say about when you have citizen policing, which they're pushing for in Minneapolis, is Elon Omar and Tlaib. We're both pushing for that. And at some point, it starts to get corrupt. So if you have citizens out there policing and doing traffic stops, same thing happens in Mexico when you drive down. If you drive down south and you drive your car and you get pulled over, they won't give you a ticket if you give them what? Money.
See, Gordon and I both just did that symbol because he lives in Vegas and I lived in California for 3 years. And once you live in those states, people who grew up in those states and who have made that vacation trip down to Tijuana or wherever, that's what they tell you. They just say, take a load of cash. If you get pulled over, just pay it off.
Yep, pay it off. So, and I think that's what would end up happening, and it would kind of become, districts. Mm-hmm. So, the more power you give these citizen police, the more they're going to take. So they're going to be like, you couldn't probably drive out your neighborhood at that point.
Yeah.
Like, hey, where you going? In order to leave your neighborhood, you need to pay a fine. We're protecting you, but you need to pay us in some way, shape, or form. Because they're not going to do it for free.
And how would they vet them out,
Yeah.
I could just see some criminal-minded people deciding to jump on the force. It's funny you said citizen police, and I flashed back to
Police Academy, Citizens on
Police
Patrol.
Academy, Citizens on Patrol. Yes.
Just imagine, you're driving. We have citizen police, or wherever Vegas or California, Florida, and you're driving out your neighborhood, and some guy in a freaking Dodge pickup with lights pulls you over, and in your mind you're thinking it's a cop, but it's not a cop. This cop's doing this one. It's a citizen officer, and he can say, "Hey, I saw you speeding. I wasn't speeding." Well, you're gonna have to pay me some money to keep me from, doing whatever. So that's a very slippery slope. And though you do get it in normal policing, policing through profit, it would be on a whole different level at that point.
I want to play the devil's advocate here and just play the other side. I'm sure somebody could propose the argument, well, if you're someone who's getting pulled over and you know that the person who's pulling you over only has the authority to write you a citation and there's no risk of you being arrested, maybe they won't have the preconceived notion, paranoia, or the instinct to just spontaneously act up or to be violent.
But what if they decide to just step on the accelerator, keep on going?
When I heard it, what you were talking about Citizens on Patrol. The thing I think about here in Cape Coral is we have oftentimes they're retired police officers, and the other times they're just retirees. We have the Cape Coral Voice Patrol, and they drive around in Fords, and they have amber and green lights on the top. And basically what they do is if there's an accident, they'll pull out the cones and they'll do traffic control, or if there's a DUI checkpoint set up, they kind of sit there as witnesses for court. So when I'm hearing about the traffic czars of Minneapolis, I'm thinking of these guys driving around these little wannabe police cars with the amber and green light on top of it.
Well, and that makes me go back to that one guy who's gotten in trouble in Florida who ran this funeral escort service scam and pretending he's a cop. I think his light colors were like amber and purple.
Sorry.
I think Metro State was the name of the company, and he just screaming at drivers. He ended up pulling over a guy who was actually a cop from out of town on vacation. And this dude, man, he's lucky he didn't get in bigger trouble physically from somebody.
I don't know if it's because I'm double fisting a Miller Lite and some Larceny bourbon, but when you said funeral escort, I thought you meant he was hosting funerals and pimping up prostitutes. Like what kind of service is that? Funeral and escort service.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say about like policing is, I think police need to focus more on neighborhoods.
Yeah.
100%.
Instead of, full city blocks. Hey, this is your area. This is what you focus on. You get to know the people. You get to know their names. You go door to door, introduce yourself. So whenever you come in to this area, they would know. They would know exactly who you are.
Yeah, 100%.
Real quick, while he's getting after his dogs, one of the things I was thinking, one of the benefits to doing this sort of thing, sorry, I muted him. I just hit ask to unmute. One of the benefits to doing this sort of thing is one of the biggest complaints people have about law enforcement is the fact that oftentimes they seem to focus more on wanting to write tickets opposed to doing quote unquote police work. Like I know down here in Florida, and Michael, you'll have to unmute yourself. I muted you momentarily, but you'll have to click unmute. Ask to unmute. Yeah, there you go. But anyhow, one of the benefits of this would be the fact that you would have police officers more available to investigate things and spend more time on fighting civil issues opposed to how many officers do you see on a day sitting behind a bush, sitting behind a sign, waiting to write what I call fundraising tickets. So that definitely would be beneficial there.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
Oh my gosh, he's on the counter behind you.
Your dog's on your counter up behind your
That's awesome.
Speaking of which, I was watching your TikToks today. What the hell were you making? That steak and shrimp? You're a foodie and a cook too? What don't you do?
Oh, man, I do it all, man. So and I'm going to get back to your other question about law when I was young, my grandparents owned a restaurant.
Okay.
So I was very young, and out of 5 boys that lived in the house, my uncles and my brothers, I was the only one who was really involved in the cooking stuff.
Okay.
You know, so I learned at a very young age. I'm not school trained yet, but I learned everything just from working in the restaurant, and I just learned how to. I don't know. It just comes natural, like somebody who can draw or paint, man. It's just so natural. So that was a steak and shrimp. That was a filet mignon with garlic shrimp on top, with asparagus wrapped in mozzarella with bruschetta.
Mm.
That was one of my classics, actually. And then my eggs benedict. You know, I'm a really big breakfast guy.
All of it looks super damn good. Real quick, we're going to take a 60-second break. We're going to do the TikTok lesson of the week. I got a good one this week. Last few of them have been kind of political. This one, we're going to bring the last back. So hold tight for this week's TikTok lesson of the week.
And now for the What's in Your Head podcast TikTok lesson of the week.
If you identify as a man, please touch this video and tell me a joke that is not at the expense of other people's feelings.
I was walking in my neighborhood the other day and I came across a crowbar. I'd never seen so many drunk birds in my life. Then my friend turned to me and asked, "Is the aurora borealis heavy?" I said, "No, it's pretty light." The worst thing about an apple addiction is you can't see a doctor about it. I went to a party dressed in flags. It was a semaphore moment. My town is famous for this well-known cartographer. He really put us on the map. They say it's the American dream to make your own money. But then we imprison counterfeiters, so what message are we really sending? Fun fact, both colanders and calendars can be used to organize dates. How can you tell that a guy eating a banana is gay? He's eating it with his boyfriend.
And this has been the What's in Your Head podcast TikTok lesson of the week.
Every once in a while, there's a gem that just comes across my timeline.
That was a whole slew of dad jokes.
Yeah, they started out weak, but they got better. I like the calendar one and the calendar. They both can be used to organize dates.
Well, I was thinking eat the banana sideways, but
Yeah, you eat it with your boyfriend.
I was like, eat it sideways. That's why I did this. I was like, eat it sideways.
Let me ask you a question. I'm just going to come out with it and just say it. How much shit do you get for being an openly conservative black man on TikTok?
Oh, man. So I started off, to rewind a little bit. So I started off just like killing them with kindness with my little dance, So I started off doing that. Then it got to the point where it started to get overwhelming, and I just started deleting it. But I get a lot of hate, man. I got called a moon cricket. I don't even know what a moon cricket is. And somebody was like, "That's like an old school term from back in like the 19 something." I was like,
I saw another African American mention that phrase in a comment, and he went and researched it. Apparently, hold on, we got a drop for that. Apparently, that goes back to little shortly post-slave days, and apparently it's references to slaves that would go out and when they would get together at night, they would sing in the moonlight. And much like crickets would chirp at night, that's where the whole racist terminology comes from. Because he looked it up too. He's like, "What the hell's a fucking moon cricket?" I know.
So I did my little dance, and I was like, "I prefer Uncle Tom." So I use it. So what I do, I use it to hate, like all those hateful terms, or whatever. Can I say that on here?
Yeah, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, the coons, the Uncle Toms, the moon crickets. I kind of reverse it to where I make fun of it. I'm making fun of myself to where they can't even come back with it. Right now.
Sure.
You know?
It's just, I don't know, it's so crazy how someone's political views can erase their race or their sexuality. Like, I'm sure you know who Conservative Ant is. He just recently moved down here to Fort Myers, openly gay, huge Trump fan. And basically, because of the fact that he is a Trump fan or openly conservative, his sexuality no longer matters. Whereas in that community, if he was a Biden supporter, then it would matter. And it's just so crazy that the group that claims to be the big tent, we love everybody, well, they only love you as long as you think the way they do. And
They're segregating. They're actually creating more segregation. And that's what's disgusting. To me, people's people. I don't care where you come from, what you do. You could be a great person or you could be a jerk, you know, and it just seems, God, it's awful. It's,
All three of us are in our
I don't even
40s.
know what to think. It's insane.
All three of us are in our 40s, correct?
Yeah.
I was at WrestleMania last weekend, maybe the weekend before, and I was with a friend of mine who invited me, and we were talking to some people, and one of them was a younger chick and her mother, and we had this conversation, and the mother said that, you know, her generation's learning from the younger generations, and me and my buddy Brad said, well, here's the thing, us 40-year-olds, we were raised not to see race, right? That's how do you fight racism? How do you kill racism? You don't judge people on a race, like Martin Luther King said. There is no race. But now, if you don't see someone's race and don't judge and acknowledge their race and the struggles there within, which there can be some arguments made for that, but now they're telling us if I don't see Michael's race, that makes me a racist.
Yeah.
But it's like, no. Me noticing Michael's race and not caring about it, just like Michael don't care about the fact that I like to eat asparagus on the weekends, it means he don't care. He doesn't judge about, you know, basically what I'm getting at, I put as much give a shit into his race as he gives a shit about my diet. Why care? It has nothing to do with anything, right? But nowadays, if by him not caring or me not caring, that makes us, he's a foodist, I guess, because he don't care about my asparagus intake, and the fact that I don't care about his race, that makes me a racist, and the fact that I'm straight white male makes it even worse. But we won't go down that rail.
You said it wrong. You're cis white male.
Oh yes, cis white male.
Just use the proper pronoun.
Yep.
But you know what I always say, it's always the hyphenated people that I call them hyphenated people that have a problem with anything.
Yeah.
Race, gender, whatever, sex, and all this stuff. Most people that just claim that they're Americans, and most, I think, majority of conservatives actually believe in that.
Mm-hmm.
That we're Americans, man, we don't care. You can do whatever. And look at the difference in. Let's go back to TikTok. Let's look at the difference between conservative TikTok and the hyphenated TikTok. You know, most conservatives are out there. Yeah, we have some angry folks, but most of us are laughing, joking, you know, putting it out there. Most of these people are miserable. They jump on your page because they're miserable. You know, and they're just miserable people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that old term, misery loves company.
Absolutely.
You know, so if you're happy and they see that and you're not caring, they have to try to bring you down to their level. So we got to, you know, I say stop replying to them in anger. Just reply to them in humor. You know, that's the best way to get them off the page.
When I was in high school, someone gave me a poster. It was one of those color by number, not paint by number, but color by number posters. It was real cool, kind of like a, not really deadheady, but just kind of like a castle scene, dragon, all that. But in the envelope, she had cut out some things from some magazines, and she put something in there that just blew my mind and always stuck with me. And maybe now it would be considered offensive, but it said nationalities will continue to try to outdo one another as long as we call them races. Fucking perfectly said.
Yep.
What more do you need? It's
That's it.
But nowadays,
I mean, you think about it, when this all started back when Trump first got elected, black versus white, you know, and then people BLM sprouts up and they're doing and, you know, everyone was pro black. Then you had this other race that said, hey, we need a peace. So now we're going to bring the southern border into it.
mm-hmm.
We're going to bring the southern border in because more and more black people are waking up to the Democratic Party. And the people in charge know that. They're like, oh, we're going to talk about the border. Oh man, more and more Latinos are opening up. You know, they're figuring out the Democratic Party isn't what they say. Oh, now we're going to bring the Asians. Now we have this black on Asian crime going on, this black on Asian hate thing going on. And, you know, everything's just bouncing around from race to race.
But if they add more races, then we're going to get real close to all lives matter. Yeah. Boom, mind's blown, right?
But
All lives matter.
but where
Weren't
you
you all against that? Wasn't that the siren song of the white racists?
but what you're missing out on is they're not looking for more races. They're looking for more victims. They're looking for people to play the role
Well,
of victims.
100%, absolutely, and I agree with you.
And this kind of goes back to what I want to touch on.
they'll step on their own dicks at some point in time.
On the recent episode of the Hooch podcast, that's HOOCH. You can find it on Stitcher, Spotify, basically where all fine podcasts are found, as well as YouTube. I'm your co-host. Forgive me for not know his name off the top of my head. He presented the fact that, why is there a cry or suggestion, hey, let's lower the voting age to 16? And you brought up a good point, hey, as far as you're concerned, as soon as you start paying taxes, you should have the ability to vote. But your co-host is like, I really don't understand what is their desire to do so. And I know, well, I can assume their desire my theory on their desire to do so, and this is something we've talked about on our podcast. Back in the 60s and 70s during the hippie age, their motto was never trust anybody under 30. Because once you're over 30, you have life experiences, your ideals and your idealisms are cemented, and it's harder to get people over 30 to change their mind. It's hard to indoctrinate them.
Because you gain wisdom.
Whereas 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds, not only do they not have life experience, but there is a natural human desire to rebel, right? Just like the stuff we're seeing, they're rebelling against their parents. All the preppies and the yuppies in the 80s were rebelling against their parents, who were the hippies. The hippies were rebelling against their parents, who were the World War II generation. And so if you can
we all listen to Rage Against the Machine. And
so when your party tends to get the mainstream media, the Hollywood, the hip hop community, the rock and roll community, and all these, and the sports, let's be honest, all those groups tend to be, at least they may be closeted Republican, but out in the open, they have to say they're liberal, because otherwise they'll get blacklisted from their communities. But they tend to have the thumb on the pulse of the kids. The kids, their lives revolve around pop culture, right? And so if you can get 16s and 17-year-olds to vote now, and those demographics have a natural inclination to rebel, and your party tends to get the people that they towards to rebel with, then that's just more votes for them. And that's why they want to do it, because they're easier to manipulate. They're easier to suggest what to do too. And that's why when you
add to it with the whole no ID for voters, right? Which is gotta really piss off, especially, some certain segments of America. And now it's like, so you're saying that we're unable to get an ID? We're too stupid to go get an ID.
And this isn't even,
I believe Georgia's offering it for free. I mean, come on.
See, this is old hat though, because if we remember when Obama was in office and Arizona said, hey, we're going to start enforcing the federal voter laws and require voting, they were talking about how it's hard for Hispanic immigrants to get IDs and all that, and how, and meanwhile, people in Ohio and Kentucky are like, dude, in our state, once you're over 18, you have to ID. If you get pulled over and you're the passenger in the car, you have to produce ID for the police. And so none of this is new. And so they just keep recycling the same nonsense. What's up, Morgan Long, OG5 checking in, John Kraft, Chris Quinton all on Facebook. I was going to say MySpace.
Oh, yeah, I wish they bring that back. But, I grew up in California, and a requirement, once I turned 16, I had to have a state ID. Wasn't a driver's license, just like California ID. Go over there, you pay $5, whatever it costs back then, just a little ID, and you have identification. This whole notion of what the left is trying to push, like, they never really say black people. They do sometimes, but they mostly say minority.
Mm-hmm.
Can't go down the street and get an ID to their local DMV. You're pretty much saying they're too cash check.
Well, how do you cash checks? How do you pay bills? How do you function? You know what? If you can't get an ID, I think it's more poor decision making. And I don't know if I wanted your decision to go on the books. And that may sound like an asshole way to think, but
no, it's not. I'm the same way every election season when it's like 3 days beforehand. Don't forget to go out and vote. No, don't vote. We've been talking about the candidates for 6 months. They've been on the TV. They've been on radio, every YouTube ad. If you don't know when election day is, when it's a week out, I don't want you to vote because you're a little ill-informed and you're just going to vote for the people who are on TV telling you to go vote. I don't
know this name.
I'm not down for the reminding people to go vote. If you're so under a rock that regardless of what form you get all your information from, whether it's internet, TV, you don't know there's an election coming up, you don't need to be voting. I'm sorry.
Were you on meth for like the last 6 months, passed out in your bedroom?
Do you not have a cell phone that's blowing up every day with telemarketers? Real quick.
I wanted to make one point.
Yeah, go ahead.
To make your generational thing. When you talk about the different generations, the boomers and stuff. One generation that these Z's and these millennials never really mess with or talk about?
Us. Generation X.
Well, they just lump us in with boomers, right?
Yeah, well, they throw us in with boomers because they don't want to, they're scared of Generation X.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff that they're enjoying, guess who created it?
Who do you think?
All the social media and all this technology that you guys like, it was the Generation Xer that created that stuff, or late millennial.
Who do you think developing video games? Who do you think brought the online gaming community to where it is? We're the beta testers of Super Nintendo, Atari 2600, ColecoVision, etc., etc.
And they're intimidated by this because we're dangerous, man. We were raised by boomers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we had that older generation that told us the old ways.
And I think he froze up. Are you still there, Gordon? Yep. Michael has frozen up. Yep, Michael froze up on us.
We're down to 8 minutes.
Yeah, we're down to 8 minutes. We'll see if he comes back online. And not only that, but we're also the generation, and we've talked about this before, we're the generation of question of authority, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And now
the man was the government.
Yeah, and now it's like, well, don't question authority, do what they say. And I was listening to Joe Rogan podcast, and they were talking about the definition of fascism, and it's funny how Antifa claims to be anti-fascism when the root definition of the purest form of fascism is forced compliancy, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Michael Harris has froze up. We're about out of time with him anyhow. Feel free to go check him out on the Hooch Podcast. As always, head over to d-410.com. We post every episode over there, including pertinent links. So we'll have a link to the Hooch Podcast as well as Michael Harris's TikTok page. You guys can go follow him on there. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to do a reset, and then we'll be back for the rest of the show. Thank you, John Kraft, Morgan Long, Chris Quentin, and everybody joining us on YouTube. Thank you, Michael Harris, and Gordon and I will be right back momentarily. I just need to go into here, switch to here. We'll do the little test signal thing.